Can you believe it? Right in the middle of my 17th birthday party, the house lit by candles, laughter all around, my daughter-in-law suddenly flung a glass of red wine in my face and screamed, "You owe us everything." In that instant, the commemorative dress I'd kept for over 30 years, a keepsake from my late husband, was drenched, stained a deep, blood-like crimson. And just minutes later, my son and his wife were being led out of this house by police on his mother's birthday. You might ask, how does a family celebration, a night that should be full of love, turn into a tragic, tear-soaked drama like that? The answer goes back 3 months, when I, a quiet retiree who's lived simply my whole life, unexpectedly won a 5 million lottery. I thought it was a miracle at last, a gift that would let me enjoy my golden years, travel, give to charity, and have the little freedoms I'd never dared to imagine. I was wrong. Winning didn't just bring money, it pulled up the darkest currents hiding in the hearts of my family. A son who used to be indifferent suddenly called every day. A daughter-in-law who'd always been cold turned kind, sweet to the point that it made me suspicious. I thought this windfall would bring us closer. Instead, it was all a mask. Behind it, they were hiding a terrible secret. Massive debts, more than 1.2 million, and a plot to turn me into their bottomless wallet, covering up their mistakes and extravagant lifestyle. That night, beneath the candlelight, with flowers and gifts still piled on the table, I came face to face with the truth. The person I trusted most, my own son, whom I'd raised with everything I had, was standing with his wife, using family ties to bind me, to force me to sacrifice once more. What they didn't know was that I was ready. I had prepared a counterattack they would never see coming. I still remember the feeling as if it were yesterday. It wasn't just the icy sting of wine soaking into my skin. It was the coldness in my own son's eyes. Daniel didn't rush to help me, didn't even flinch at his wife's violent outburst. He just stood there, silent, like an accomplice. My heart ached, but my mind was strangely clear. I knew this moment was a turning point. If I gave in, if I softened, the rest of my life would be theirs to control. The truth is, it had all started weeks earlier. After word spread that I'd won the lottery, Daniel began calling me almost every day. At first, his calls felt warm, and I believed he'd changed, that he finally remembered his mother. "How are you, Mom? Have you met with a financial advisor yet? Do you want me to introduce you to someone trustworthy?" His voice was sweet, caring. But I began to notice something odd. Vanessa was always there in the background. Sometimes I even heard her whispering prompts into the phone, feeding Daniel exactly what to say. Vanessa had never hidden her hunger for wealth. She worked in hospitality, surrounded herself with rich people, dressed in luxury brands, and constantly flaunted items worth far more than her actual income. I used to wonder, where did the money come from? Now I knew: mountains of debt. That evening, the birthday dinner had been meticulously planned. They brought roses, extravagant French catering, and bottles of wine I wouldn't have dared look at the price tag for. Naively, I thought, maybe, just maybe, they truly wanted me to feel happy. But the black briefcase in Vanessa's hands told another story. She opened it, laying out papers one by one, like knives stabbing into the table. Bank statements, court notices, loan agreements. The final number nearly knocked the breath out of me. 1.2 million. My voice trembled. How could it ever come to this? Vanessa smiled coldly. Investments. Building a future. And part of it is simply the cost of maintaining the right image. But now you have $5 million. You could wipe this burden clean with just one signature. I turned to Daniel, hoping he'd say something, anything reasonable. But he only nodded. "Mom, this isn't just about helping Vanessa. It's about saving my future too. If she goes bankrupt, I'll lose my job because of the financial fallout. Please, Mom." I was speechless. They didn't see me as a mother, the woman who had sacrificed her whole life to raise her child. To them, I was nothing but a wallet. And to make it worse, they used the word family as a weapon to chain me down. Vanessa sealed it with a cold sneer. "If you choose money over your own son, then we'll know exactly what kind of person you really are." In that moment, a sharp clarity cut through me. It was time to teach them a lesson. I pulled out my checkbook, wrote down a figure, $5,000, and placed it on the table. "This is all I'll give, and it's a gift, not an obligation." Vanessa's eyes darkened. And then, without warning, the glass of red wine came crashing into my face. I wiped it away, lifted my chin, and for the first time in years, I heard my own voice ring out clear and sharp. Fine. You want to see me selfish? Then be ready. Because from this moment on, I will protect myself no matter what. After the glass of red wine slammed into my face, the room fell into a deadly silence. All that remained was the soft hiss of candles and the sharp smell of wine clinging to every thread of my commemorative dress. I slowly dabbed my face with a napkin, my eyes never leaving the two people sitting across from me. Daniel kept his head down, as if he couldn't bear to look at his mother. Vanessa held her chin high, her gaze full of challenge as if she'd just won. But they didn't know that, in that very moment, I made a decision. I would no longer be the victim. 30 years on the lectern had taught me how to handle difficult students. I knew how to deal with the stubborn and the cruel. Now I would use every ounce of that calm to handle my own family. I sat up straight, palms flat on the table, my voice steady and cold. You two think you can use family to pressure me? Fine. But tonight, in my own house, I will show you the consequences of greed and disrespect. To Daniel's surprise, I stood and walked down the hall. I picked up the phone and called the police. I reported the assault, the financial coercion, and the psychological threats against an elderly woman. Less than 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Red and blue lights flashed on the porch. 2 officers came in, took statements, and inspected the scene. When they asked if I wanted to file an official report, I looked straight at Vanessa and nodded. Yes, I do. Vanessa went pale but tried to bluff through it. You called the police on us on your birthday? She spat. I replied simply, exactly, because this is my home. No one has the right to humiliate or exploit me. Daniel stammered. Mom, we're family. You can't do this to us. I turned to him, a voice choking but resolute. Real family would never turn their own mother into an ATM. If you let your wife treat me this way, you've already cut the tie between us, Daniel. The officers escorted them outside to take statements. I watched without tears, without shaking. There was a hollow ache inside me, but also a strange relief. I knew nothing would be the same, and I also knew I had done the right thing. I had protected myself. The next morning, I contacted my old attorney. We met at his office in downtown Houston. I went over everything, handing him the messages and the debt papers Vanessa had laid on the table. He listened, then nodded. You did the right thing by filing a report that night. This will be strong evidence if they continue to harass you. He recommended immediately moving a large portion of the lottery winnings into an irrevocable trust, a legal shield to protect the assets from claims or lawsuits, even from family. Hearing that felt like a weight lifting. Finally, there was a clear path for safeguarding what was mine. While he prepared the paperwork, I asked him about setting up a fund in my husband's name, the Carter Foundation for Senior Protection, to help other elderly people who are being exploited the way I was. I wanted to turn my pain into something that would help others. That night, returning to a house, still smelling of wine and with red stains on the tablecloth, I sat on the porch and watched the Houston streetlights glow. I knew the storm was only beginning. Daniel and Vanessa would not let go easily. But this time I was not the small, suffering woman who would quietly endure. This time, I was ready to face them, and I would not lose. 2 weeks after the birthday night incident, I received a thick envelope from a law firm in Dallas. Inside was a lawsuit. Vanessa was accusing me of financial abuse and lack of capacity to manage assets, demanding that the court appoint a legal guardian for me, and, of course, the person she proposed was Daniel. I sat frozen for several minutes, staring at the bold black print. It wasn't enough they didn't just want my money, they wanted my entire life. If this lawsuit succeeded, I would become their puppet. Every dollar I spent, every decision I made, would require approval from my so-called guardian. My hands trembled, but instead of fear, I felt my blood heat up. They had gone too far. I called my attorney immediately. After listening, he gave a dry chuckle. Absurd. You've already prepared your documentation. We have everything. The incident report, the police file, call recordings, and the debt papers they themselves placed in front of you. This isn't just a baseless claim, it's proof of deliberate manipulation and slander. We'll strike back. The court date came sooner than I expected. I wore a deep navy suit, the same one I'd worn for parent-teacher meetings, like armor I'd kept all these years. Inside the courtroom, Vanessa sat cross-legged, her makeup flawless, trying hard to look composed. Daniel looked worn out, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Their attorney, a young man, already looked uneasy, forced to defend an argument too weak to stand. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, spoke firmly. The plaintiffs claim Mrs. Eleanor Carter is no longer capable of managing her finances. On what basis? Their lawyer stammered. Your Honor, she refused to support her family in a time of need, despite having the means. This shows poor judgment and undue influence from outside advisors. I nearly laughed, but I held my tongue, letting my attorney rise. He spoke with precision, each piece of evidence striking like an arrow. The police report from the birthday night, photos of my wine-stained dress, threatening messages from unknown numbers, and the towering debt documents. He closed with, "This is not a matter of competency. This is a case of financial coercion against an elder, and my client did exactly what was right. She protected her assets and her dignity." The courtroom fell silent. Vanessa's face tightened, lips pressed thin. Daniel lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. The judge flipped through the file a moment longer, then looked up. The plaintiffs have no grounds. This case is dismissed. Furthermore, the court will consider sanctions for filing a frivolous lawsuit with signs of harassment. I drew a long breath, as if a massive stone had been lifted off my chest. Vanessa muttered angrily at her attorney, her face pale. Daniel sat motionless, like a lost child. And I, for the first time in years, felt truly free. Afterward, my lawyer leaned close and whispered, "You didn't just win. You've set a precedent for other seniors to follow. We can go further, countersue for harassment and defamation." I nodded. I knew the battle wasn't over, but now the scales had tilted firmly in my favor. That night, back home, I switched on the living room lights. The room was empty, yet it felt warmer than ever, not because I had money but because I still had myself, and I had defended my dignity against greed and betrayal. After the court dismissed the case, I thought I might get a few weeks of peace. Life, however, had other plans. Just 2 days later, the local paper ran a story. Elderly Houston woman wins financial dispute against son and daughter-in-law. The piece spread fast, not because of the money, but because the story felt so wrong. A 70-year-old mother, who'd lived frugally all her life and then won the lottery, was being targeted by her own son and daughter-in-law. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Neighbors called to offer support. Former colleagues from my teaching days sent encouraging notes. Strangers found my number and called just to say, "You did what many won't. You said no to family greed." I smiled. It was comforting. But I also knew Vanessa's temper. She wouldn't give up easily. Sure enough, by the weekend, a friend sent me a video taken at a bar. In it, Vanessa sat with a group, her voice full of arrogance. "That old woman thinks she's won, but I'm not finished. I know how to make her pay." It sent chills down my spine. Here was a woman who'd lost in court, been exposed in the press, and still scheming revenge. Daniel was different. He was silent. No calls, no texts, nowhere to be seen. Neighbors told me he'd moved out of the apartment he shared with Vanessa and was staying at a cheap motel. Rumor had it his company reassigned him because the scandal damaged his reputation. Part of me felt sorry he was my son after all, but another part felt this was the inevitable consequence of the choices he let himself be manipulated into making. Late one night, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, tired eyes, a rough beard, a hollow face. He was no longer the confident, well-put-together man I knew. His voice was hoarse. "Mom, can I come in?" I let him in and poured him a glass of water. For minutes he sat quietly, hands clenched, until finally he said, "I was wrong. I know I disappointed you. But you don't understand. Vanessa is good at controlling people. She made me believe that if I didn't go along, I'd lose my wife and my career." I listened in silence. A jumble of feelings rose inside me. Anger, pity, a hope that my son had finally woken up. Yet I couldn't forget the look in his eyes on my birthday, the night I was humiliated, and he stood still, failing to protect his mother. I spoke slowly. "Daniel, I am still your mother. I can forgive, but trust must be rebuilt from scratch. If you truly want to make things right, you have to prove it with actions, not words." He nodded, tears welling. "I know, I will. But Mom, I'm afraid Vanessa won't stop. She's looking for other ways to get back at you. I heard she's contacted dangerous people. I'm scared for you." That warning stopped me cold. So Vanessa's plotting hadn't ended. I realized this fight was not over, and this time it might not be limited to courtrooms or debt papers. Daniel's warning kept me awake for many nights. I knew Vanessa was reckless, but the thought of her reaching out to dangerous people was beyond anything I'd imagined. Instead of being afraid, I chose to get ready. I worked closely with my lawyer and the police, handing over everything I had, threatening texts, the barroom video, even Daniel's testimony. I wasn't going to stay on the defensive anymore. I wanted this battle finished once and for all. A week later, right on cue, Vanessa struck again. That evening, I found a thick envelope stuffed into my mailbox. Inside were surveillance photos of me shopping at the market, having coffee, even watering my garden. The last page carried a scrawled warning. If you don't pay, we'll get even closer. I turned everything over to the police. They confirmed it was harassment, even a potential threat to my life. I signed the report, and for the first time, I felt I was no longer the victim. I was the one fighting back. Days later, officers raided a rented apartment near downtown Houston. Vanessa was there with a man who had a criminal record. Both were arrested for harassment, threats, and conspiracy to extort. The headline broke the next morning. Houston woman who defeated daughter-in-law in court now sees her arrested in revenge plot. This time, no one believed Vanessa's excuses. Her reputation collapsed completely. Daniel came to me, eyes red. "Mom, it's over. I'm sorry for everything. I have nothing left but you." I hugged my son, feeling his arms trembling. I knew forgiveness couldn't erase the wounds, but it could be the beginning of healing. 1 month later, I officially launched the Carter Foundation for Senior Protection. The ceremony was small, but reporters came, along with lawyers and elderly people who had lived through the same pain. I stood at the microphone, looked into the cameras, and spoke clearly. I don't tell this story to complain. I tell it as a warning. Don't ever let someone use the word family to chain you down. Real love never comes with the condition that you sacrifice your dignity or your savings. If I, a 70-year-old retired teacher, can stand up and protect myself, then any one of you can too. The room erupted in applause. And in that moment, I knew I had truly won, not just against Vanessa, but in the fight to reclaim myself. That night, back home on my porch, I sipped hot tea as the cool Houston breeze swept through. I thought to myself, sometimes winning the lottery isn't a gift, it's a test. It doesn't change who people are, it reveals them. Vanessa lost everything to greed. Daniel nearly lost his mother to weakness. And me, I finally found freedom, faith, and strength within myself. And the greatest lesson I want to leave you, the one listening right now, is this. Set boundaries, even with those you love most. Protect your dignity and your future, because no one has the right to decide your life but you. If this story made you think, leave me a comment, share the video so others can learn this lesson too, and don't forget to subscribe. There are many more true stories filled with drama and unexpected twists waiting for you to discover.